Daily Tech News Show is made possible by you, the listener. Thank you, Brad, Kevin Morgan, Paul Teason, and brand new patron, Stephen Daniel. Welcome, Steve. Welcome, Daniel. On this episode of DTNS, smart glasses are already the product of the year for next year. An exoskeleton to help people climb stairs, and Dr. Niki reviews the winners of the Ig Nobel Prizes for weirdest science that makes you laugh and think. And think. This is the Daily Tech News for Monday, December 23rd, 2024 in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
From Goat Central, Alabama, I'm Dr. Niki Ackermans.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
How are the goats in Central Alabama?
They're still dead, so it's going well.
I mean, if they came back to life, that would be a problem.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to say I'm sorry to hear that, but that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to study the live ones. It's too hard to get a look at their skull. Yeah. They're always moving. More on that later. Let's start with the quick hits. Bloomberg reports Apple's working on a smart lock and a doorbell that would use Face ID. The system might work with a bunch of multiple third-party locks, or they might just partner with one. We don't know yet, but it could be released by the end of next year at the earliest. C.W. Basden noted on our subreddit that Telegram says it's profitable. Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram, said Monday they have 12 million paid users and they're considering going public. R.W. Nash posted this on the subreddit. Analyst Ming-Chi Kuo says Apple is going to use TSMC's advanced N3P node for its M5 chips. And what's interesting about that is the CPU and the GPU on the N3P node built chips have separate designs. So it's more of a server-like arrangement that improves production yields and thermal performance and can run at full power longer before needing to be throttled down to prevent overheating. Kuo says Apple might use the M5 Pro chips to power Apple Intelligence servers. Jury in a federal case in Delaware found Friday that Qualcomm did not breach its agreements with ARM as a result of its acquisition of Nuvia in 2021. Qualcomm just kept paying its own rate after it acquired Nuvia rather than the higher Nuvia rate, and ARM didn't like that. However, the jury did not determine if Nuvia breached its agreement, meaning that this case might be brought again. And if Qualcomm and ARM don't settle, it will be brought again. Finally, Palantir and Anduril are teaming up to convince other tech companies to join them to create a consortium to bid on defense contracts. You know, if they all pool together, they have a better chance of getting the contracts. Financial Times says that they've been talking to SpaceX, OpenAI, Saronic, and Scale AI, among others. And if you need a reminder, Palantir was founded by Peter Thiel, former PayPal exec, and Anduril was founded and is currently run by Oculus founder Palmer Luckey. The Financial Times sources say Meta plans to introduce a display to its Ray-Ban smart glasses, quote, as soon as next year. The display would be used to show you notifications and responses from the virtual assistant. So right now you can talk to it and it'll talk back. With this one, it could just show you something. Meta showed off an advanced display called Orion back in September, but that prototype is still considered too expensive to bring to market. So this more limited version would be the way that Meta could bring some displays into its headgear. Google and Samsung are also working to make a device using Android XR that would work in a similar way. So it looks like more displays coming to smart glasses in 2025. On Threads, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg said glasses will be the next major computing platform. We've already talked a lot about on DTNS, like, do you want to wear your computer on your face? But Niki, we haven't asked you. Would you like to wear your computer on your face?
So I have notifications disabled on my smartwatch, so I probably wouldn't get an extra device to put them on my face. I'm too distractible. But as usual, I recognize the benefits to that. And I will say, I don't know if maybe I'm not old enough, but this is the first like wearable on your head thing that I've seen out in the wild. I was at a conference recently and I saw someone using these as their everyday glasses. So maybe they're actually one of these that's actually going to work. Or I mean, I guess they are working since we're getting a 2.0 soon.
I have the first version of them. They do look like normal glasses. The second version look even more like normal glasses than the first version. They're even not quite as thick as the first version. I assume that the third version is going to get even more glasses looking. I think one of the reasons people like them, and they really like the version 2s quite a bit, is that they are unobtrusive, right? You can talk to it when you want to. You can press the button to film when you want to, but otherwise they're just glasses. And I wonder if notifications is something no one really wants. Whereas lots of people leave notifications on their phone. I'm like you. I turn notifications off in as many places as possible. I have as few of them as possible, but not everybody's like that. And if you were to have notifications constantly flipping up in your view, I imagine that would be a detraction. It would be a...
Yeah. I also note that being on the other side of those and looking at someone where you can see the little camera feels weird. It's like, am I always being filmed? I don't know. I didn't really like that, but I guess you could just ignore it eventually.
They do have a light that comes on. They have worked to try to make the light more visible so that you know when someone's taking a photo or taking a video. But yeah, that is a concern for these. I do think that while it's fun to poke fun at Meta and be like, oh, you're not doing a metaverse, you're doing glasses. Glasses are the next major computing platform. I think this is a step down the road to something that would one day be the metaverse, right?
Oh, yeah, if they could put VR metaverse into them, they would. I'm sure they're eventually going to work on that.
Yeah, and the way you get there is step by step. So, having any kind of display in the glasses, whether it's for notifications or whether it's for something else, I think is useful. I think I would be curious if it's capable of doing more than just showing you a message. So let's assume you turn notifications off. You're left with, it could show you the answer to your question instead of reading it to you. And maybe you prefer that. That doesn't seem like a killer feature to me, but okay. Can it show me arrows when I'm doing navigation?
That's what I want. Yeah, navigation or like subtitles on a movie. Live translation would be another application for this. If I'm sure this is a baby step towards integrating other things into the, the little visualization that you have on your head, could be cool. Is it selling to people who don't normally use glasses? I don't know.
Well, it's definitely selling better than a lot of people expected. And by that respect, it is selling well. I don't know how many people who don't need glasses are buying them. You can put just clear glass in them and wear them that way, but
sunglasses, right?
Yeah, and you can get them as sunglasses, so a lot of people would want them that way. But you're not always going to have sunglasses on. I mean, sure, there are the Corey Harts of the world who wear their sunglasses at night, but most of us don't. So that does limit their usage. I do think that Zuckerberg's probably not far off that by the end of next year, when you go into the optometrist, not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, they'll be like, here are the basic frames, here are the ones with polarization and anti-glare, and here are the smart ones. They'll have a section. Of
course. Why not? And it looks like Android's working on this too, and Samsung. So let's get at it. Let's see what the competitors are bringing in. And yeah, maybe for your yearly predictions, you should have thrown glasses in there.
I did that. I did predict that on the top 5, but Niki is looking into the future to our predictions episode at the end of this month, and it sounds like I won't do that on the predictions episode.
Interesting.
Yeah,
just a hunch.
Even though you're telling me, and there's time for me to change my prediction, by the time the show comes out, I probably will have forgotten. But yeah, I don't think I ended up doing that in our predictions episode, but I probably should. And I will be looking for these sorts of things at CES with an eye toward like what's differentiating them. Last year, there were a lot of companies doing them. And so it was fun to be like, oh, there's this company, Xreal. They've got very compelling glasses that are competitive. Meta, of course, gets the marketing boost because it's Meta. And they also, have to partner with somebody like Luxottica that makes the Ray-Ban brands. I'll be interested to see if Xreal or any of the other smaller makers are pushing the envelope on features. If they're putting displays in these, what do their displays do? What else are they're going to have these things do? Because I do think this is an area for a fertile ground, to put it.
You can get creative with this, especially if you got teams competing against each other. So I say, go ahead. Someone mentioned wearing sunglasses at night. Let's throw night vision in there while we're at it.
Oh yeah, that's another couple of steps down the road from notifications showing up in the corner. But it is it is interesting to see that this is now reaching parity with Google Glass. Google Glass had no glass in it. It just had the little display thing that would put an annoying green display in front of your eyes. But we're finally back to parity with Google Glass. So, yeah.
They were just a bit ahead of the times.
This next story is actually putting us into Iron Man's universe. The Exoskeleton Laboratory team at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, or KAIST in Daejeon, has developed a lightweight wearable exoskeleton that helped a paraplegic patient walk, including climbing a staircase and avoiding obstacles, particularly able to like slide in between a narrow space between two benches and sit down. Paraplegic Kim Sung-hwan, who demonstrated the device, is also part of the KAIST team that developed it. The exoskeleton can actually walk on its own, so it can come to the patient and then help them put it on. It kind of clamps down on them, and then that helps them stand up, and then they latch it in. It's called the Walk-On Suit F1, made of titanium and aluminum, weighs about 50 kilograms, so that's 110 pounds. Sensors on the sides and upper body monitor signals at 1,000 times per second to anticipate intended movements. We were looking really hard to figure out exactly how it does it. All we could find is that it somehow uses the balance. So it may just be reading the balance of the person operating it. It also has some lenses on the front to help it identify objects and stairs, so it can shift into stair climbing mode when necessary. But certainly not the first exoskeleton ever, but able to do some interesting things that exoskeletons aren't always able to do.
Yeah, I thought this one was interesting. It seems like we have a very futuristic DTNS today.
Yeah,
but,
right.
And the fact that this was developed as part of this kind of like exoskeleton Olympiad, where they develop these specific challenges, like you said, scooting in between a bench to test these machines. It's pretty neat. I love when the target population for something like this, which is in all essence like a disability aid or a movement aid, that population is actually included in developing the tool. I think that usually tends to make the tool a lot better. So that's really exciting to see. And yeah, an interesting aspect about how it responds to the person's balance with sensors on the inside and sensors on the outside to help them kind of move forward and do all these different movements. I think it looks like the man that was in that video also had somewhat of a controller. We're not quite sure.
Yeah, there was some remote on the side, and we don't know how much that is involved in operating it, whether it's just, pushing it forward or whether it can guide it a little bit. But it definitely has all those sensors to maintain its balance. And that is the other thing in the video. You see him using one of the canes to like try to knock the thing over before he puts it on to show like it can maintain its own balance really well.
Yeah, and another innovation of this was that it comes over and like hitches onto the front of the person. Apparently, a lot of the other exoskeletons kind of work from the back. And that I can imagine is really helpful with balance because you can like put your weight on it and move forward and kind of just let it support you in that way. I don't know how that works with comfort, but it's interesting to see a different perspective on that.
Yeah, I did not see anything about how comfortable this is or how long you would want to be in one of these. This is very much about the technology for balance and precision. So, a lot of exoskeletons can't climb stairs. This isn't the first one, but there aren't as many that are capable of that. And I think one of the things they were touting is it probably doesn't sound as impressive as it is, the ability to move to the side. To be able to move to the side without falling over, and then be able to sit down on a bench. In practice, think of how many kinds of seats, theater seats, subway seats, things where you need to be able to do that. You need to like slide into a small space.
I mean, even in the human body, that's a lot of micro movements and coordinated muscles and sensory feedback that's involved in those kinds of things that you don't think about when you do them. But once you can't do them, becomes really, really complicated. So I'm assuming a lot of engineering is involved in just being able to do that. And I think they said that they have some kind of integration with AI for detecting objects. I'm sure that comes into this kind of, like you said, different seat height detection. So yeah, cool innovation here from KAIST.
Yeah, go Daejeon. Good stuff. If anybody knows any more about this, by all means, feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. In fact, if you have feedback about anything that gets brought up on the show, you can email us or get in touch with the folks on the socials. At DTNS Show is our handle on X, on Instagram, on Threads, on Blue Sky, and on Mastodon. DTNS Show. I know there's 2 S's in it, but that's just the way it works. DTNS Show.
We voted.
On all of those platforms. We did. And the Mastodon instance, if you need that directly, is mstdn.social. If you'd like some video from us, you can find us on TikTok and on YouTube at Daily Tech News Show. Now, probably everybody in the audience knows about the Nobel Prize, the awards given to individuals who work for the benefit and advancement of humankind, but maybe fewer of you know about the Ig Nobel Prize. 10 awards given to unusual scientific research. Dr. Niki, you thought it was a good time at the end of the year, since we already talked about the Nobel Prize, to look back on the Ig Nobel Prizes. First of all, tell us what those are.
Yeah, so these were awarded back in September. I don't think, considering the Nobel Prize episode we did, I don't think I'm in the running for a Nobel Prize, but I think I might be able to one day get an Ig Nobel Prize. Someone just has to nominate me.
Yeah.
Basically, It's kind of a pun about the Nobel Prize, although the Nobel Prize is somewhat involved. It is an honor so you get an award. The goal is that first the science makes people laugh and then actually think. That's kind of the main theme. They're all a little bit silly.
So the science has to be legitimate. These are not
the science is legitimate.
Science.
These are real publications, and it basically someone, either they're self-nominated or someone sees this and is like, wow, that's really, they found something out, but it is kind of silly on the face of it. And so they get nominated. I think there were 10,000 nominations this year.
All right, let's run through some of your favorites. The theme of the 2024 ceremony was Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will. So that sets the table quite well. Who won for the physics prize?
Yeah, so I put this one first because it's my favorite. James Liao of Harvard won for demonstrating and explaining the swimming abilities of dead trout.
Of dead trout.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this one's great. Basically, Liao was able to show that live fish don't actually need to move their muscles very much. So by putting dead fish in specific stream conditions and using a system that measures muscle response to simulation called ectromyography, sorry. Basically, it's the wake of the stream where these trout swim up that propulses their body because it's a specific foil shape. You actually don't almost need to produce any energy. You just reuse the energy of the current. So by using dead fish and making them able to do this, it shows that live fish don't really need that much energy to do it.
So wait, he was able to have the dead fish swim upstream?
Yeah. So in like an artificial tank, but basically they created movement. The dead fish didn't move, but because of the turbulence in the tank, it propulsed them.
Okay. All right.
Because of the specific shape of their body. Kind of like how you see a canoe like stuck in the rapids, but it doesn't, it moves like in a weird way.
The water's rushing past it, but it's not going anywhere.
There you go. Something like that. I'm not a physicist, but that's about it. And this is really like silly and funny findings. You kind of see the theme of how these prizes go. But now we understand better about hydrodynamics and how you can make things move efficiently in specific water systems. So pretty cool.
All right, let's move on to the Ig Nobel. I almost said Nobel Prize for chemistry.
Yes. So this was a team of researchers from the University of Amsterdam, and they developed a technique to tell apart drunk worms from sober worms.
Hold on.
Why?
How does a worm get drunk? How do you know?
Oh, you just put it in alcohol.
Well, okay.
Ethanol.
Won't that preserve it?
Well, I'm sure there's some kind of dilution involved. Yeah. But
do they have little breathalyzers for the worm?
Really yeah, this is a worm breathalyzer. The goal wasn't really to get the worms drunk as much as this is really, you have to put yourself in the mind of a chemist. Okay. They're interested in how different size polymers are transported based on their size. Okay. This is done, and the technique is called chromatography. And they just figured out, well, some polymers are actually active on their own. So what would be a good model for something that's active on its own? A worm. And a worm is basically, to a chemist, a giant polymer. So if you want to figure out if the activity of the worm is messing with how it can be transported in a medium. And how do you mess with the activity of a locomotion? You make something drunk. This is their thought process. So what they did is, in a chromatograph, you have basically a geometric array. It's on a microscopic scale, a bunch of little poles, kind of like a maze. And they let these worms pass through this array, and some of the worms they intoxicated. They gave them a bit of ethanol, just so that they would maybe have a slower activity rate. And then they made the worms race each other. So they raced the drunk worms against the sober worms. And surprise, they found that the level of activity of the worms does determine how they're sorted as a polymer in chromatography. So less activity, you're sorted differently than more activity. And then they can translate this to other instances, maybe not worms, but active polymers.
So this was not, let's get half the worms drunk and see who wins the race. This was, I mean, let's see how they sort out at the end, or is it?
Yeah, well, the non-drunk worms did win.
Yeah, I would guess they would.
Which is what you would expect, but it's kind of how they sort out, like, is moving erratically or moving slower affecting the way that sorting happens in a chromatograph.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure I 100% understand, but I sort of get it. And of course, like everyone else, I'm imagining a little like free worm beer bar for half the worms.
They also dyed the worms blue and red for like each team so that they could tell them apart.
So they could tell them apart. Yeah. Interesting. But now they wouldn't have to. Now they could look at the sorting and know without having to dye them, which is kind of the idea. All right, let's go for the Ig Nobel Prize for Medicine.
This one's great, and I'm really glad I wasn't a participant in this experiment. But a team from the University of Hamburg in Germany did a test on 77 participants to demonstrate that fake medicine with painful side effects is more effective than fake medicine without painful side effects.
So wait, the medicine's fake, but it can do something to you, and in some cases it hurts.
So it's basically an expansion on the placebo effect. Let me explain.
Okay.
So placebo effect being that you take something that you're told it's a medicine, and so you believe you are feeling better, and then you actually do feel better.
Right.
And so in this case, they had participants spray what they called a pain medicine into their nose, although it was a placebo, it was just saline. And one group actually had this spray with capsaicin in it. So like, the thing that makes hot sauce spicy, they sprayed up their nose.
Ow.
Yeah, not fun.
That's horrible.
And then both groups, they put into a functional MRI so that they could see activities in the brain related to pain. And they gave them a thermal stimulus, so probably just a little hot kind of, not a burn, but something, you know, that you can do legally. And the group showed a lower pain response in response to the stimulus was the spicy nose spray group.
Hold on. And I don't want to be the kind of person that says, well, I know better than these scientists, because I'm sure they thought of this, but what if the capsaicin is causing the pain reduction?
We know a lot about I'm assuming, but we know a lot about the things about capsaicin. It's been used as like a neuroscience testing thing forever. And we know that it doesn't. The point is that it causes pain.
So we know that capsaicin doesn't have a side effect when shot up the nose of reducing pain in your arm. Basically.
And it's very possible that they had an extra control group that didn't have the stimulus that had capsaicin.
But had the capsaicin. Okay. Yeah.
I didn't read the entire paper.
That's why I said I don't want to say this can't be true, because I'm like, I have this question I bet they addressed. So that's
it is important to test for controls, and it's very smart to point that out.
Well, thanks.
The point for the scientists here is that when you feel the side effects, so you're like, this medicine heals you, but it stings a little bit when you put it in your nose, then you know that the medicine is working. And so in your mind, you're like, okay, well, I don't feel pain because the medicine worked.
So we need tingly placebos is what
this goes along with other things we know about the placebo effect, which is if the pill that you have as placebo is bigger, you believe that it works better. And if it's more expensive, you believe that it works better. And so it turns out if it's more painful, you also believe that it works better. So this is a fun one.
I mean, placebos, they work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knew? I love it.
All right. Real quickly before we wrap up, the Demography Prize. Who won that one?
Yeah, so this goes to Saul Justin Newman from Oxford. And I don't know, Tom, if you've heard about blue zones.
Yes, I have.
And this has recently been a documentary on Netflix, zones where people live to 100 and older, and people are very, mystified about what are they doing? Are they eating a lot of fish and what's going on? Well, Dr. Newman found out for his detective work, he got this prize. He discovered that many of the people from these blue zones, having lived the longest life, lived in places with lousy birth and death record keeping. Essentially, the places that are reported to do this generally suffer from either just not issuing birth certificates, lots of clerical errors, or people who do a lot of pension fraud. So probably that's just not true at all. But
so
important
they were
to know.
So they weren't necessarily living longer. They just said they were old, and we didn't have any way of telling.
How do you live to 100? Yeah. You count bad.
and so they were able to determine this by looking at people with solid verifiable records and seeing, there wasn't much difference, I guess.
I think they checked like the rate of clerical errors, the rate of pension fraud, and whether or not the country issued birth certificates. So you could definitely check ages like this.
Yeah.
I can imagine you can't necessarily check the whole country if those records aren't there. The point being, record keeping is really important in science and in everything.
Turns out diet may be better for your longevity than blue zone, just moving to a...
Yeah. And keeping records.
And keeping records is going to help all too. All right, let's check out the mailbag. First of all, we got Cindy writing regarding our discussion on GDI Friday about YouTube guilty pleasures. Cindy says, mine is Girl with the Dogs. She does dog and cat grooming videos. She actually has 2 channels. The videos on Girl with the Dogs are shorter than the ones on Girl with the Dogs 2. And Bert said, I use YouTube for repairs. I repaired my dishwasher with a YouTube video. Hopefully you mean you looked at the YouTube video and then repaired it, not putting the YouTube video in the dishwasher. Do you have a YouTube guilty pleasure, Dr. Niki?
I do. I have 2. So one of them is Simone Yetch's channel, which used to be all about shitty robots, and now it's just about making really awesome stuff. I love Simone, and she's just awesome. I don't know. I'll watch anything that comes out of her channel.
Yeah. That's hardly
the other
a guilty
one,
pleasure. That's a good one.
I should have looked up the name. Maybe if I talk long enough, I can pull it up. But it is a fashion from like the old times channel. People like recreate Victorian era dresses, and it's one of those things. Like I'll never do that, but I'd like to watch someone do that for like 3 hours. And I couldn't tell you the name, which is terrible. But maybe. What's yours, Tom? And then I can pull up the name.
Let's see. I don't really have I had an answer on Friday, and now I don't remember what it was.
Do you just not have time to watch random YouTube videos? No,
I watch a lot of YouTube YouTube stuff. I mean, I'm trying to think what would count as a guilty pleasure. We watch Cecilia Bloomdahl's channel about living in Longyearbyen, which is north of the Arctic Circle, in Svalbard. Cool. But that's not really a guilty pleasure. I have watched those like, here's how a restaurant prepares to make, 1,000 meals during the day, where they're like, mixing 100 eggs. Roger watches those too. Those are always fun.
Those are pretty great. Oh, I
do, in fact, watch those because they have a very narcotic effect on me and I fall asleep.
They are, they do make you sleepy. Oh, I found her. Karolina Zabrowska. There we go. Had to plug.
Nice. Allison Sheridan, after our Thursday discussion, went looking for Hunter de Butts and found not Hunter de Butts, but William Hunter de Butts, who lived between 1899 and 1987. He was married to Mary Custis Lee in 1925. Woodrow Wilson's presidency was till 1921, so the timing is off, but that didn't stop Allison from digging. Mary Custis Lee isn't Mary Anna Randolph Custis Lee, but she was married to Robert E. Lee, which was mildly interesting. Allison says, I spent some quality time pursuing relatives of Woodrow Wilson's 2 wives, Ellen Louise Axon Wilson, who died during his presidency, and Edith Bowling Galt Wilson, who became the next first lady, but didn't get anywhere there either. But hey, I found William Hunter DeButts, so maybe he's not entirely imaginary. Also, fun fact, there was a junior and a second and on until William Hunter DeButts IV, who played lacrosse as recently as 2014 at Princeton. So look at that. Good job. And good job to you, Dr. Niki. Thank you so much for being with us to talk Ig Nobel Prizes and such. Where can people find more of what you do?
Yes. Thank you for having me as always. I'm findable on NicoleAckermans.com. That's my website. And same handle on Blue Sky if you want to hear what ramblings I have to say on this fine day.
Excellent. Patrons, stick around for the extended show. There are more Ig Nobel winners we didn't talk about today, and so we're going to get to them on Good Day Internet. Bird-guided missiles and breathing through your butt. Stick around for a good science-y laugh. You can also catch the show live Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 2100 UTC. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Back tomorrow with Brian Brushwood, who's going to explain how he uses AI in his daily life to do a lot, including produce his show. Talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.